struggled for a long time with surviving. And no matter what, you keep finding something to fight for. Now, I know that's not what you want to hear right now.
Swear to me. Swear to me
that everything you said about the Fireflies is true.
I swear.
Okay.
As always, I want to save Chuck and I for last because I think the two of us have the most to say. Lee, where are you with the finale? How you feeling? What did you think?
So I will just say this: I
Full
watched
details.
it, and then I watched it, and then like 15 minutes later, Chuck sends a bunch of what seemed to be expletive emojis
Yes, he does.
in a row,
Yes, he did.
and I was very confused because I'm like, let me just look this up and see how it actually ends in the game, and it was pretty much spot on except for how they got there. So I'm not sure what that was all about, but I just don't like the fact that he straight up lied, and that's how this whole thing went, and that's just a problem with the story itself, not with the show. So
You're supposed to feel that way.
I understand that,
Okay.
but it makes me really just uncomfortable and not really. I understand that's the point. I get it. So that's just how I feel. I don't like how it ended because I'm watching it the entire time. When he goes off, I'm going, this is super selfish. Like, she straight up came out and said, this needs to be done. She understood what needed to be done and what was most likely going to happen. And she said, yeah, let's do this. We need to do this. And he knew what was going to happen too, but it seemed like he thought that she still didn't fully grasp what this meant.
I don't think
And
either one of them
he
walked
comes
into
in
the
there guns
situation thinking
a-blazing.
that. I don't think either one of them walked into that situation thinking that she was going to die.
Well, she probably thought that there was some level of a chance. She
I
was
don't
willing
think
to
so.
sacrifice. I feel like she was willing to sacrifice herself if that's what
Yes.
it came down to.
If that's
and
what.
that is yes.
Go ahead. I'm
And
sorry.
that's what it came down to. And that's the way they portrayed it. That's the way that it all seemed. And then it was like when he just went off, it was like he was a child. He was a child having a temper tantrum who just went into a quote unquote fugue state while he just took people out through this hospital. And I'm like, the entire time I'm going, I don't see how this is a good guy. Like, I don't see him being a good guy in this situation one bit. And then obviously it got worse and worse and worse and everything with what's her face, the Firefly lady there. I was like, dude, like, I don't like this. And then he straight up lies to her like multiple times. And yeah, I have no sympathy for his character whatsoever anymore. It was super selfish, and I just don't like it. You know, you could tell that she noticed what was going on with him, and that he was being all like, hey, look at me, hey, look at this, hey, what do you think about that? And she was clearly just not having it. You see this role reversal between the two of them, and you could tell he's feeling like semi guilty, but then again, trying to cover it all up because he just wants to relive what he once had that he lost because he didn't do what needed to be done. So here he's pulling a Thor where they're like, what did you do? I went for the head. Like he's trying to redeem where he screwed up the first time. And in that, he made a very selfish and stupid decision. So I understand that's the story. I understand that's how it's supposed to go. I just don't like it.
Okay.
So other than that, I will say what was really cool is right off the bat in the beginning, you see the woman who's giving birth, and for some reason, I just knew that was Ellie. I knew it. Like I knew it. There was like the way that the show does things and the way that shows do things. When you see somebody who's kind of like, this person, either she looks familiar or something about this person means that she's a significant person in real life. So the way they did that and the way that she was introduced, and as soon as she said Ellie, and you know that the baby is Ellie, I was like, oh, that's actually Ellie. I looked it up and I was perfect. It was spot on. So it's pretty obvious that the way they laid it out was to get those people in there to kind of give a nod to the video game and the people who created it. So I did appreciate that. I like that they threw that in there, but maybe I've just watched too many things, that are based off of something else, whether they're remakes or, depictions from a video game, adaptations rather, that it's just like, it's kind of expected at this point. I mean, you did mention that Joel's voice actor was in like the last episode,
Yeah,
as a
he was.
different character.
Yeah, he was. He was the guy who was buddies with David. Todd.
Right.
I'm getting Todd in my head because Chuck kept calling him Todd, but it's not Todd.
Whatever.
It was James.
He's dead.
James.
He's dead. That's who he is.
Yes, he's dead.
So that's that.
Okay.
But yeah, I'd say overall the episode was good. I just really didn't like the ending. For me, it was very unsettling because I had more. I lost all respect for his character, for Joel.
Okay.
And it's upsetting because I don't want to not like Pedro Pascal's character, but I do. So
I mean, it doesn't take away how you feel about Pedro Pascal.
no, just the
Okay.
character Joel.
Okay.
No. I'm just it's just it's okay. Remember when people got really mad at Chris Pratt for screwing up the death of Thanos?
Kind of.
And people were like writing him like death threats. It's like it's a movie.
It's a movie.
Like I'm not there, but it's more just like, oh wow, it's like my thought of his characters has been shattered because of the way he played this role that is just like it is in the game. So I understand it's how it's written. I'm not going to be sending any death letters or anything like that, but it's just
The only
I
thing
don't
that
like the end.
The only thing that I will comment on is, despite you saying that you did not like the ending, this is the longest that you've talked about a single episode, like doing the opening. So it's doing its job. It made you think about something, and it got a reaction, and an emotional reaction out of you, which is what it was supposed to do. So it absolutely did its job. And
Right.
I will also
I
say
also
that
said the same thing over and over again.
Not really. You said different things. And I also want to say I completely agree with you. I love the fact that Ashley Johnson is Ellie's mother. It was perfect. It was absolutely perfect the way that they introduced her. And that's all I'm going to say there. Chuck, do you want to go and start ranting about this tunnel? Because I know that's where you're going to go. We talked about I know that's what you're going to do.
That's where I'm going to start, because I said that last week. I said if they take out this entire scene, I'm going to be super mad. And the reason is except for what, 2, maybe 3 episodes, no infected,
No infected.
no bloaters,
Yeah.
no clickers, no nothing. The entire show.
It's unforgivable.
It's like
it's completely
it's
unforgivable the
Walking
way that
Dead
they
with
did
no
that.
walkers.
Yeah.
Yeah, they brought the giraffe in. I thought that was cool. That part was straight out of the game.
It was a real giraffe
people-
too.
It was a real giraffe. Many people thought it was CG, but the giraffe was the only thing real in that scene.
Unbelievable. I was blown
Yeah.
away that it was a real giraffe. I thought it fooled
Yeah.
me. I thought it was fake, but that's because the blue screen threw me off.
Yeah,
Like you could tell there was a lot of fakery going on in that scene, but I was like, "Oh, this is all." And then I looked it up and I was like, "Wow. A real giraffe." Okay,
did it.
cool.
They did it. They did a great job with that whole part. They go into the tunnel, and then they get to the other side really easy, and they skip everything.
Yeah.
So I appreciate that they used what's her name for Ellie's mom. That they used the voice actor for Ellie as Ellie's mom. That was really cool.
Ashley Johnson, yes.
It's not just the
Ashley
voice
Johnson.
actor, because didn't they actually take
Motion
the people
capture.
and they did motion capture.
Motion
for
capture
both-
too.
for both of them. Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
Okay.
the guy who played what was it, Royce or Reese or whatever his name is, from Kathleen's group, who played Tommy, and
Not Percy.
Percy. I think that was his name. Yeah, Percy.
Percy. Yeah.
Yeah,
He played Tommy.
yeah, he played
Yeah.
Tommy, and obviously the guy who plays Joel, Troy Baker. All voice actors and motion capture for everything. Yeah.
So aside from that, again, broad stroke, did they capture the end? Did they do the ending the right way in
Shot for
regards
shot.
to that? Almost, yeah. I think I have a poor taste in my mouth from last week where they dumbed down David's character so much, and they dumbed down that entire thing so much that because he was supposed to be the big bad, like he was supposed to be like the ultimate bad guy villain in the game, and he was like, you had to actually fight him, and you were Ellie fighting him. In the game, when you're fighting Marlene, you don't kill Marlene. You're sitting there watching it do things, watching it as if you're watching the show. Joel does kill her the same way in the game. He's holding the gun underneath, carrying Ellie.
It was shot for shot. It was shot for shot. It was wonderful.
Yeah, I watched it and it was shot for shot.
Oh,
yeah,
so
that
you
was
actually
really,
watched
really
you
good.
actually went and watched the gameplay.
I did because
Oh,
I was
cool.
upset and I'm just like, okay, how was this actually supposed to end? And I'm like, oh no. So why is Chuck so mad? Is it about some tunnel thing? It's probably about a tunnel,
Yes.
isn't it? And sure enough.
That's a whole big part. There's a lot that goes into that. I think that's my biggest disappointment through the whole show is the lack of infected,
Yeah.
because it is littered throughout the game,
Especially with a show that has this kind of budget. I mean, I read somewhere that it has 100 million plus. Like, okay, you have was it 100? It's almost 100 million. You have roughly $10 million per episode to invest in this, and the lack of infected is just, to me, it's unforgivable. It doesn't
Well, the
justify
fact
this
they
price
showed-
tag.
The fact that they showed the bloater so early on and then it never came back,
Yeah.
that's surprising.
Yeah.
That whole scene where they had that many of those things come flying out of the earth. I'm sorry. You see that and you're like, wow, this show is gonna get good. Did I say game? Whatever. I said this show is going to get really awesome. And it just
and that was the peak.
that was
that was
it. It just stopped.
That was the climax. It just stopped from there. And I think that's where it lost me, is from that right after that episode, when they went into the next episode with, and when Sam gets killed and they're all there, from that point on, the show itself went downhill from that point on for me. But I mean, this is a difficult. I mean, going from the town to the hospital is a difficult part to play in the game, and it's an important part. I mean, it's 2 out of the 4 bloaters that you see in the game. We only saw 1 this entire season, which was disappointing. I
Quick
did
side
hear
note,
rumors.
Quick side note on
Yeah.
that: if you play on a more difficult level like I did, there was actually 3 bloaters down there. So
Oh, is there really?
yeah, I think if you play on hard and grounded, or no, survivor and grounded. I played it on grounded, which is the hardest difficulty in the game. There are 3 bloaters down there. It's crazy.
Yeah. Oh, and how many clickers, and then how many?
It's
like-
more. The difficulty amps up a lot with just the
Amps
sheer
it up.
number of people. Well, the sheer
Right.
number of infected gets amped up, and the supplies and the resources diminish greatly. So it just makes everything more difficult. It was not fun.
Right. And I think, even if they had 1 bloater and like 2 or 3 clickers and a handful, would have been like, show some, because the conversation that he has with Marlene when she's like, how did you get here? Aside from the 2 stops that he had, it was super easy.
Yeah.
barely an
know,
inconvenience.
Barely, you're right. Barely, he didn't, because either he was faced with people that wanted to kill him, or B, he was faced with infected that wanted to kill him. In this case, in this show, he was faced with people who want to kill him. And that's where it stops. And there's only really 1 person who wants to kill him. Outside of that, everybody else is like on his side. So talk about, Lee making fun of Lord of the Rings when, what was the first movie? Second
That's
movie.
not,
do,
I
do,
didn't
do.
do that.
In this-
Randall made fun of it.
I know, but what was happening in this show? Oh, do. Bang, bang, do, bang, bang. Other than that, nothing. And I think that's where when they actually hit shot for the game, where they brought even if they changed the shot up a little bit and they made it more relevant to the game, that's when it got better for me. Just like last week when she meets David and there's no infected and she has to fight side by side with him. That's all part of what makes this journey, this struggle, so impressive that they actually got to the other side of the country, basically in one piece. But it took a lot out. There was no meat to this episode except for the very, very, him and Marlene, and that was it. Other than that, there was absolutely no meat to this episode, in my opinion. Your go, Will.
Okay. I agree with both of you. I do not like the lack of infected. I don't think there's an excuse. When you have a television show that has a budget of $100 million and there are only 9 episodes and you have 1 episode loaded with infected, it's unforgivable. It's unexcusable. I don't like it.
Unbalanced.
Not at all. Not at all. It's, for me, that's a problem. Okay. Getting into the story, did the ending land? Was it shot for shot? Absolutely, with a couple of caveats. One, and I'll get to it later, but one problem that I have is they give Joel this ridiculous story about how he tried to commit suicide and that's why he's half deaf. Not in the game. And they did exactly what I was afraid they were going to do. They gave
remember
him...
he had super hearing?
They did exactly what I was afraid they were going to do, and I was afraid that they were going to try to give him somewhat of a sympathetic out for what he was going to do. That's what I was afraid of, and they did that by giving him this story about I was going to commit suicide, and I've been depressed, blah, 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 and, time doesn't heal all wounds, and then he gives her the look. That's not a part of his story. That's not a part of the game at all. That's one problem that I have. Another problem that I have is Chuck and I have done a lot of talking about the small little subtleties that they leave out. The little glances and the looks here and there, or the small little interactions that make the game unbelievable. They took a lot of that out, but they actually made time when Ellie sees the giraffe and Joel gets up to the top of the ladder and you see the shadow of the giraffe go by. They can put that little subtle detail in there, but everything else, it's just like it falls by the wayside. Not the biggest fan of that kind. Why add that little detail in, but everything else you just throw on the cutting room floor? It baffles the mind. And the last thing that I want to talk about before we actually get into the episode is I lost it. It doesn't make sense. The surgery that the Fireflies are going to do doesn't make any sense. So the fungus grows in the brain. And her version of cordyceps, or her mutation of cordyceps, makes other cordyceps think that she's cordyceps, but she's still being attacked by infected. What? Why? That makes no sense. It makes no sense at all. What? So that's really it.
Yep.
Those are my opening thoughts. Aside from that, like I already said, I love that Ashley Johnson is Ellie's mother. I love how you get to the end and it doesn't shy away from how, like Lee said, how selfish Joel is at the end and how he can get pretty bloodthirsty if he has to. And again, the whole point of the ending of the game is to leave everything kind of up in the air, and what Ellie meant when she said okay after, Joel just basically lies to her and you just get an okay for her, roll credits at the end. Exactly the same way. So I do like that. I love that it's kind of ambiguous what she's thinking and what she's feeling in that moment. I love that they didn't shy away from making Joel the bad guy, because at the end of the game, he is the bad guy. There's no getting around that. A lot like last week, how we had with David, how they introduced this ridiculous story arc of him being a preacher. Here they introduce something ridiculous about him and like being suicidal like the day after his. I get it, but it's just like you don't have to give him that sympathetic note to like give people an inkling to hang on to about this character. You don't need to do something like that. You could have just told the story the way that it was, and it would have been perfectly fine, and everybody would have gotten the message. Why put that in? To me personally, it was unnecessary. I could have done without that, but that's it. Okay.
I'm with you. I do understand why Joel goes to save Ellie. I mean, when you think about it, he already lost his daughter. Now he has this connection with Ellie.
Right.
And that's what's motivating him. So it's understandable.
Right, but it's the odd thing is
I
it's
don't
very
think-
clear. it's very clear to everybody watching it that that's what's going on.
Right.
It's
It's supposed to be.
extremely clear.
It's
Yeah.
supposed to. It's supposed to be. But the part I don't agree with though is I don't think that Ellie knew. Because you typically, even playing the game, when you're talking about a cure, typically you're thinking it's in the blood. She tried doing that in the game and in the movie, in the show.
Didn't work.
It didn't work. But through the whole, you don't know that it's in the brain in the game either until this part. So I was happy about that. But
you even have that line from Marlene here that you don't get in the game, where, yeah, she was worried about you, and then we knocked her out. We didn't tell her anything. She won't feel any pain. Ellie has no agency at all. So that's
Nope,
the only...
she has no idea.
That's the only saving grace that I will give Joel, is I do think Ellie deserves to know kind of what's going to happen before, they just bring her in, and they drug her up, knock her out, and they're just going to go through with this. I don't agree with that, but I do agree that she deserves a choice. I think she deserves some agency in what's about to happen. The right thing to do would have been wake her up, tell her what the deal is, and let her decide for herself.
Or he still could have said, what he said about the Fireflies. She got him out. He got her out. And then he could have said that the Fireflies got away, but he could have said, I saved you because they were going to kill you to actually find the cure.
There's no excuse for him lying. I don't agree with that. I don't think he should have lied to her at all. That makes him even more of a villain.
Right. But the thing is, if he said they were going to kill you in order to get the cure, then she would be stuck with that guilt, and he didn't want her to have that guilt, and that's why he did what he did.
Understandable.
So, but it still doesn't excuse it.
I think the part that I think if he was trying to save her and it required the casualties that he got to get in there and save her, that's one thing. But to sit there and say, "Oh, there's more like you," and they're all out there and they're doing that, that's where I think he
it's so
went
she wouldn't feel guilty.
way overboard. That's what I was saying is if he just said, I saved your life because they were going to kill you to find the cure. Be honest
But that's
there.
in the game.
But then just I get it. I'm just talking about the character Joel and all, the whole thing. That way it would have, the saving grace at that point would have been, don't even talk about killing the Fireflies. Just say, hey, I had to save your life because they were going to kill you. And then leave it, at least be honest about that and don't say anything else.
So I don't know. I don't like it. I never liked it. Even when I played the game for the first time, it didn't sit right with me that he lied. I always thought that, okay, this is incredibly selfish of Joel to do. There's no getting around this. And even after, like, when they're in the car and they're on their way back to Jackson and he gives the whole, I got us out of there because we were attacked by raiders and there's a whole more like you and blah, 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 blah. Yeah, he's doing it so that she won't feel guilty about anything. But even when you get like to the precipice of Jackson and she's like, she doesn't come right out and say she feels guilty, but she's like, first it was my friend Riley, and then it was Tess, and then it was Sam. And she's going through this whole, that's why she feels guilty. Because these are all people that she could have potentially saved because she's the cure. And that's it. That's it right there. Lying to her after that is dirty.
Yeah.
I could see that.
I think that's dirty. Anyways, let's get into the episode.
Hey everybody, Lee from Black and White Reviews here. Just wanted to take a moment to thank you for tuning in, checking out our conversation. If you like this discussion and you want to hear more about this specific subject or other things, check us out on our podcasting sites, whether it's Spotify, Apple Music, or Google Podcasts. We're up on pretty much all of them. So yeah, thanks again for popping by, and be sure to like and subscribe. Thanks.